Hello and welcome to the Gettysburg National Military Park Museum and Visitor Center. Abraham Lincoln and I want to invite everyone to join us this week to take the Great Task Virtual Leadership Challenge course. Now, what is the Great Task Virtual Leadership Challenge course? Well, we're premiering it this week because this week is also National Park Week, National Volunteer Week, and National Student Leadership Week. And those are some things that our Great Task Student Leadership Program is all about. It's all about students in grades 7 through 12 with their youth groups, organizations, or schools learning about what their great task is in their life or for this coming year. So the Great Task is a phrase from Lincoln's Gettysburg Address, the 10-sentence, 272-word speech that he delivered here on November 19th, 1863. Not right here, about a quarter of a mile behind me, to dedicate the Soldiers' National Cemetery. He said, "It is rather for us to be here dedicated to the great task remaining before us, that from these honored dead we take increased devotion to that cause for which they gave the last full measure of devotion." The great task. He was trying to get people to understand why the war had to be continued and won, to keep the Union together and to end slavery in this country for eternity. But there are other challenges to these ideas that all men are created equal. Other challenges to the idea that we live in a country of the people, by the people, and for the people. And you all have a part to play in responding to those challenges. So our Great Task Virtual Leadership course today is going to have you go through with your youth group a series of challenges on things like endurance and teamwork and decision making and organization and communication, so you can see and be inspired by what happened here at the fields of Gettysburg, what happened here afterwards during the aftermath of the battle, what led to these great words by President Abraham Lincoln. See what your group thinks is your great task, what you're going to do to change your community, your school, your life, the country, or the world. So we hope you'll join us today. Get ready. It's going to be a fun-packed day where you're going to learn a lot about Gettysburg and a lot about yourself. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you for participating in this Great Task Virtual Youth Leadership Program. I'm John Hoptack, a park ranger here at the Gettysburg National Military Park, and I'm standing in front of a very historic structure here on the Gettysburg battlefield. This is the home of Lydia Leister. Now, Lydia Leister had just purchased this property a few years before the war would turn everything upside down. And as the Battle of Gettysburg is getting started on the other side of the town of Gettysburg, Lydia Leister and her children are going to evacuate their home, evacuate their farm, and soon the Union Army will come and take over their property. This small home right behind me was turned into the Union Army headquarters of Major General George Gordon Meade. And if you take part in our Great Task Leadership Program, if you come here to Gettysburg, you might have an opportunity to go inside the home, to explore the historic structure and learn a lot about leadership and George Meade's style of leadership and how it could pertain to our lives today. To be a good leader, you have to be a good communicator. And from here at their Leister home, George Meade was able to communicate to his entire army that was stationed all around this place. From the high ground, just on the other side of the home, he would communicate with signal flags, sending messages from one end of his battle line to the other using nothing but flags. So the mark of a good leader is the ability to communicate to their people, to their team. Do you think you have what it takes to be a good communicator? Well, here's a challenge just for you. I'm standing here on a part of the battlefield that will become known as Cemetery Ridge. On top of this ridgeline, Union soldiers took up a defensive position behind these stone and rock walls extending south towards some hilltops, and across the way, across those fields behind me, is where the Confederate Army would take up position here at Gettysburg. The fields behind me would witness some intense combat, particularly on the third and final day of this battle, with a major attack called Pickett's Charge, during which 13,000 Confederate soldiers emerged from the distant woodline and attacked the very center of the Union line, right here on Cemetery Ridge. These farmlands, once peaceful, were transformed into vast killing fields, but we always have to remember that long before this was a battlefield, this was a home. These were the backyards of the people who lived and worked and raised their children right here at Gettysburg, including the Bryan family. And I'm standing here in front of the home of Abraham and Elizabeth Bryan. It happened that their house stood right here in the heart of Cemetery Ridge. We're going to step inside and discover a little bit more about the Bryan story. Abraham Bryan and his wife Elizabeth and their children were among the African Americans who lived here at Gettysburg. And when the Confederate Army invaded in Pennsylvania in the summer of 1863, they were faced with a tough decision. Do they stay here to help protect their property, or do they flee to help protect their freedom? It was a tough choice, a tough decision for Gettysburg's residents who were caught up in this massive battle. If you come and participate in person in our Great Task Leadership Program, we will learn more about the stories of the civilians who were caught up in this battle and the decisions they faced. But until then, we have a virtual challenge for you. There's so much that we can learn from history. And if you come to Gettysburg and participate in this Great Task Youth Leadership Program with your local group, your organization, or a school group here, you could learn much about teamwork and courage and decision making and leadership. And you could also learn a lot about perseverance. Because let's face it, things in life will get tough. And you have to have the perseverance, the determination to keep moving forward, especially if you'd like to see positive change in your community or in your school or in your own life. Now, for the soldiers who fought here, determination was a trait that they all had to have. The soldiers encountered heat. This battle was fought in the first 3 days of July. Temperatures were way above 80 degrees. Many of these soldiers lacked sleep, had poor diets, very little food, but yet, despite the obstacles, despite the terrain that they found themselves on, despite the fence rails they had to find a way to get up and over, they continued forward. And the same thing is true for us. If there's any obstacles in your way, you can learn here how you might overcome them. But until you get in person, here is a challenge for you. If you come to Gettysburg National Military Park and participate in our Great Task Leadership Program, you will learn a lot about the generals and the soldiers who orchestrated and fought in this battle and the lessons we could learn from them. We'll also discover stories that are not often told. We learn about the civilian impact and the tough decisions that had to be made by the people who lived here in Gettysburg. And we also talk a lot about the medical heroes of this story. The doctors, the nurses, those who were behind the lines trying to save as many lives as possible. They would have taken over any structure that would have been of value to them, including barns here on the battlefield. So when you come and participate in this Great Task program, you will learn that it took a lot of organization to operate a Civil War hospital. You will get the opportunity to make the decisions as to what soldiers' injuries had to be treated, and you'll learn a lot about how they comforted and cared for those who were injured in this battle. It was a tough challenge. It required a lot of organization, and we ask also if you have what it takes. So here's your challenge on organization. If you come to Gettysburg and participate in our Great Task Youth Leadership Program, you will discover that history can not only instruct, it can also inspire. There is so much to be learned from the battlefields here at Gettysburg. We can learn about leadership, we can learn about decision making, we can learn about organization, perseverance, determination, and we can learn a lot about teamwork. And we could take these characteristics that we learned from history, from an event like the Battle of Gettysburg, and apply it to our lives today. If you want to make a change in your own life or in the life of your community or your school, then Gettysburg can inspire. One of the things we can learn here at Gettysburg is teamwork. And if you do come and be a part of our Great Task program, you will learn all the many steps involved in loading and firing a Civil War cannon. And you will discover it took a lot of teamwork. Most of the soldiers who fought here at Gettysburg were veteran soldiers. They had been in many battles before, but not these soldiers. The soldiers of the 9th Massachusetts Battery were in battle for the very first time. It was here where their training paid off. It was here where their discipline paid off. And before you come to Gettysburg and do this in person, we have a teamwork challenge for you.
Well, how did you all do on the Virtual Leadership Challenge course? Some of it was probably pretty difficult, some of it pretty easy, some of it a learning experience. We want you and your group to do the full Great Task program. We want you to come here and learn from the battlefield and learn from those ordinary Americans who did great, amazing things here at Gettysburg National Military Park. The Great Task Youth Leadership Programs in Community Service are all about taking and building and growing your leadership traits and character and applying them to your great task. It's a joint program that we do at Gettysburg National Military Park along with the American Battlefield Trust, and we are looking for some really sharp students ready to make a difference. Some sharp students in graded 7 through 12, maybe it's your scout troop, maybe it's an after-school program, maybe it's your student council. We want you to come here and do the full program. Now I'm here at Cemetery Hill, okay? East Cemetery Hill, we can see the Cemetery Gatehouse where Elizabeth Thorne, boy, she was someone who had true endurance. Elizabeth Thorne lived and had some of the initial burials to do in that cemetery. It's next to the National Cemetery where President Abraham Lincoln gave his Gettysburg Address. working to inspire that generation to continue to fight and win the war, to prove that a country based on the idea that all of us are created equal can survive. And now it's up to our generation and your generation to continue that great task, to continue leading and developing community service projects to improve our country and our world. I'm standing here not just because we're so near the National Cemetery where President Lincoln delivered those words, but also because this fence line was completed, cleared out, cleared by great task participants, by students and young people just like you who came here and were inspired to do something to make sure this ground would be preserved and future generations could learn from it. Now you may have a project in your town, at your school, affiliated with your church. You may have an issue that you've decided, gun violence or litter cleanup. Oh, there's been so many great projects by great task participants in the past where they've applied the skills and the knowledge they've learned here, they were inspired by it, and they went back to do great things. From late July through October, we're looking for at least 10 great groups of youth to come here to Gettysburg. You just need to apply at the website that you see on the screen. Let us know why you want to come, what your project is, about your group, and then everything, this is for you youth leaders, everything will be covered in that cost. We're going to bring you here, we're going to host you, we're going to work really hard, we're going to have a lot of fun, and you're going to make those great task challenges for the future. So we hope to see you all here at Gettysburg National Military Park to participate not just in the virtual Youth Leadership Challenge, but to participate in our great task leadership program and community service. Check out those websites below, apply today, and we'll see you here real soon.